These are my favorite films of the year. This is as good of a way we're going to get this done. So yeah, my favorite films of 2022. And we have The Menu at number 28, which I didn't watch in theaters at all. I only watched actually recently when it came out on HBO Max. Me and my wife Sophia went to watch this together, and I really it had like semi-mixed reviews when it came out. Like, they weren't bad reviews, but they weren't like overwhelmingly positive reviews. And I really enjoyed it. I liked that the entire film took place in just the restaurant, one location. All the characters were there. They were all set out. The premise was laid out pretty cleanly. It felt like one of my favorite genres of film ever is a film that feels like a feature-length Twilight Zone episode, and The Menu felt like that. It gave me that like weird otherworldly feeling where everything just feels like a little bit fantastic, a little bit off, a little bit weird, but the main character is always kind of aware of that. Everything feels a little bit off. And the class metaphors might be a little bit clunky, they might be a little over the top, but I think for the most part it's a really fine, really good commentary. I like The Menu a lot. I thought Ray Fiennes was great. I thought what's her name? Her name is Anna Taylor-Joy, and I thought Anna Taylor-Joy was fantastic in The Menu. As I said, Crimes of the Future, I did not know that people were this big. I did not know that people liked this so much. I guess it was a lot more divisive than I thought it was going to be, because when I remember when this originally came out, a lot of people gave it pretty middling reviews. They said it was interesting visually, but that was about it. The story seemed like it dragged a bit too much, and there was a bit too much talking. I just really liked the body horror aspect of it. Was I think the thing that I attached to the most on it. I thought that just the feel of the world and the entire like idea of that Cronenberg loves, the idea of like the new flesh and all of that, was really well established here, and really well, you felt like you were in this world, which is something that I really attached to, I think, in this film. And what made it stick in my mind the whole time was just, it feels so lived in, so real, so plausible, even though like they're fucking weird ass characters like what's her name, Kristen Stewart's character in it, who's bizarre and gave such a strange performance. The intro of this film is one of the most disturbing things I've seen in any movie this year, one of the most memorable scenes I've seen. The scene of the kid eating the plastic bucket. That's terrifying. The Fabelmans. Spielberg's The Fabelmans. It's a really beautiful, really well done coming of age story. I do like this trend of like directors trying to do like their own Amarcord, even though this is slightly different because Amarcord is more about how Fellini remembers growing up and the characters he remembers being with, and like doing an over-exaggerated Fellini-esque kind of way. Whereas The Fabelmans is, oh, look how great a filmmaker I always was. But like, of course, that's not what the film is about. The film is about Spielberg kind of, for the first time ever, like very openly making a film about his parents and about about his own mental relation to them, and you know how he views them now as a grown man, as you know, real flawed people and not just these idolized power figures that he grew up with, which is something that, you know, everyone goes through in life. And there's some really beautiful scenes in there, especially the bit where he films the beach scene on the little 16mm camera, and then he cuts it together, and like instead of just making it into a home movie, he crafts a story that makes this one bully kid actually like break down crying because Spielberg's character or stand-in makes him the hero of the story, and that's where he learns like the power of film. It's a film filled with great moments that I don't think stitched together to be a great film. It stitches together to be a very, very good film that I really enjoyed. Triangle of Sadness. Very bizarre film. I will say that I think once they get off of the boat, it's not as strong as it was before that. I think all the boat scenes were really interesting and really funny and absurd, and Ruben Östlund loves to make fun of the rich, and this is where I think he's really having a lot of fun with it, and the film feels a lot of fun and just bizarre and just hates these rich characters so much, these pretentious assholes. And obviously like doing the rich people thrown to a Lord of the Flies situation is funny in its own way, and he has a lot of fun with that, but I don't think that part of the story is as strong, and seeing those characters put into that situation doesn't go in any surprising ways, I feel. I think it kind of, from that point on, it kind of does what you think it's going to do, which is a bit disappointing, but overall it is a fun movie. All the boat scenes were really good. This is Gwar. I had never heard of the band Gwar until this documentary came out. I don't know how I missed it. I mean, obviously not growing up in America, not really getting into music until I was, 21 or so. So I missed out a lot on that. A lot of just talking about weird music with people, but somehow the band Gwar just completely flew by me in my life. So being able to just watch this documentary and learn about the history of this weird band was really pleasant and just really fun. Just seeing a bunch of weirdos getting together, playing music that they like, and putting on a show. I really enjoyed this. The House. I'm a big fan of stop motion animation. I think stop motion animation is just so beautiful in how incredibly difficult it is to make. Every time I watch a stop motion film, you just think of all the hours and dedication and collaboration that it takes to make one, so that whenever one of them come out and it's any good, it's just automatically impressive to me. And The House I really enjoyed because I just loved the end of the world tone that it has. It's a very nihilistic film overall. All of the segments, the first one with the people that buy the house from the strange guy, then there was the rat that is trying to sell the house, but it is just infested with mites the entire time, and then there's the final one where the house is just floating on this little thing while the whole world is being flooded, and then the cat has to learn to let it go. It feels very defeatist about the world in terms of like climate change and just overall sense of impending doom that we all feel at the moment. It's not a particularly happy film. It doesn't really have a good joyful message at the end, but it feels reassuring in its nihilism in a way. Barbarian was a really cool horror movie, I thought. It took a twist that I did not actually see coming. I'm not going to talk about the plot or the structure of it too much because I think it would be a bit too spoilery to talk about it. A lot of the film hinges on its surprises, especially after, I'd say, the first 40-ish minutes. Because the first 40 minutes you think the film's going to go in one way, and then it takes a very sharp turn, and I will say it becomes a film about how women are afraid of men in a very particular way that does have very heavy-handed symmetry symbolism in it that doesn't always work. I think it's some of the symbolism at the end with the creature is a bit over the top, but it works overall, and it has a very clear message and a very creepy tone demeanor to it. I liked Barbarian a lot. Causeway was one of those films that it reminded me a lot of Enough Said with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and James Gandolfini that came out a couple years ago, where it's just a really nice film about two adults talking about themselves. These are just two adults who become friends and talk about what is on their minds and what led them to that particular stage in their lives. What are what are their troubles? What are their worries? And it's just two people that meet each other at the right time and just form a bond. It's got what's her name? Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence plays a ex-military woman that gets hit, whose tank gets hit by a bomb, and then she's in shell shock. And then Brian Tyree Henry plays a guy who lost a leg in a car crash, and they both have their own traumas that they have to deal with that they do together. It's a great one of those just good adult films. There's nothing flashy about it. It's just two people having a conversation. The Cathedral's a very interesting movie. It's a film by, I don't think he's a first-time director, but he's quite Ricky D'Ambrose. He's made a couple films here and there, but it's a very different kind of childhood film, because it's clearly about his own life and about his own childhood, but it's just kind of like about how his family and all of his family is just absolutely horrible, and just how they just treat each other terribly, and how that's just kind of had a effect on him and how he views the world and how he interacts with people. But it's all just kind of through his eyes, through his perspective, as he's just living in this world and just growing up around these terrible people. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, as I said before, stop motion animation is incredible feat that somehow comes together and works at the end, and it just existing is a miracle. So when it's actually really, really good, like del Toro's Pinocchio, it should be completely celebrated. I love the way this film looks and the way it feels and the world that del Toro builds. It's always been del Toro's biggest strength is world building, and then where he usually falls apart is kind of in the plotting of his stories. But luckily, because it's Pinocchio, it's not that hard to go off the rails. Him taking it to be an anti-fascist film was an interesting direction that I enjoyed. I think that was a strange choice that he pulled off, and the ending of the film went in a direction that I didn't expect either, but also just feels very melancholic and feels very sad, but it kind of just works, and it does go in a very different direction than the Disney film. I think this coming out the same year as the live action remake of the Disney Pinocchio was kind of interesting to just see what Disney thinks the story should be in 2022 and kind of what the world has accepted the story is in 2022. Even though I love the 1941 film. Jackass Forever is fucking funny. It's hilarious. It's great. I love it. I love the Jackass movies a lot. All of them. The first one's great, the second one's great, the third one's great. Jackass Forever just is more of that, but it also just kind of has this great sense of like finality of just one last ride. We'll do one more and then we're done. We're old. We just want to get together and just And I think a lot of the charm is just feeling like these guys just coming together, hanging out for the last time, having a good time, but also just doing fucking hilarious pranks. And the pranks are really, or the stunts are really clever and really over the top and really funny. And it just has like this nostalgic feeling to it, just like this nostalgic feeling of just hanging out with your buddies, you know? Hang out with your childhood buddies, having a good time, acting like the good old days. That's what this movie makes you feel like. Or at least what made me feel like. Because the Jackass movies were the movies that me and my friends would watch when we got home drunk from parties, and we'd stay up watching a Jackass movie until like 1 in. And, you know, I love those memories. Those memories mean a lot to me, so bringing it back one last time felt good. Apollo 10.5, Space Age Childhood. As I said, a lot of filmmakers seem to want to be doing the Fellini's I had it, Amarcord. A lot of filmmakers seem to be wanting to do their own Amarcord lately. And Richard Linklater did it now with Apollo 10.5, which has a fantastical element to it where the kid gets hired by NASA because NASA said they fucked up and built the space cockpit too small, so they need to hire a kid to do it, and he's the smartest kid in his like science grades are really good, so they hire him to go to NASA and be an astronaut. So that's like the one little fantastical edge the film has, but what the film's really about is just these little vignettes, like memories. This is why it feels a lot like Amarcord. I'm not just saying that because it's a filmmaker telling a story about his childhood, but unlike The Fabelmans, which is a lot about how Spielberg was always this great filmmaker and always had these aspirations to do film and about his love of film, Apollo 10.5 is just a bunch of small vignettes about memories he had, about how his dad would drink beer while driving and always take the pin off and put it into the bottom of the beer can. How like the mom would iron the daughter's or his sister's hair. Shit like that. It's just these little small memories that just kind of pop up it feels like how you actually remember your childhood and your life. You remember them in little flashes, little bits, little like quirky details that just happen to you and the people that you know, rather than full-formed stories that have a beginning and end. And that's really where the beauty of this film lies in. And also just the rotoscoped look that Richard Linklater does is just always very charming and very calming to see. This Place Rules, I don't want to talk about it too much because of the whole Andrew Callahan stuff, but I am/was a very big fan of Channel 5, and I put this list together before all that shit came out. But This Place Rules is because I 10 o'clock on a Thursday. But I really like the style of his videos, and I think this making this a feature film version of it was a really good direction to do it in. I just am upset about the whole accusations. No Bears was a fantastic film by Jafar Panahi. So he is obviously the filmmaker behind This Is Not a Film and Taxi, where he is incredibly critical about the Iranian government and their political policies and their messages about free speech and how women should be treated and all of those kind of things. So because of that, he was put under house arrest for a lot of years, which is when he made This Is Not a Film in his apartment. and he started it himself and did all that good stuff. But this film also stars him, and is about a filmmaker filming a movie in Turkey. He's on the border between Iran and Turkey, but he's doing it over Zoom because he doesn't want to cross the border. He doesn't want to leave Iran. He wants to so he's right by the border so that the assistant director and him can meet on top of this hill and then like exchange footage and exchange notes and all that kind of stuff. But he's filming the whole thing over Zoom, and the film that he's filming over Zoom is also a story about this couple that are trying to run away from Iran and get passports to go to Paris. But in real life, they are a couple that actually did flee Iran and are now living in Turkey. So it is what a Jafar Panahi film is, which is blurring the lines between reality and fiction quite thinly. Because as I said, he himself plays a stand-in for himself, who is a filmmaker illegally making films critical of the Iranian government in Iran, and in Turkey. But what this film did, being released, was lead to Jafar Panahi being arrested and put in prison for, I think, 5 years, sadly. So God knows if he'll make another movie. Hopefully he does, because we deserve more Jafar Panahi in our lives. I love Jafar Panahi's films. But I was saying the line that he blurs between fiction and reality reminds me a lot of Abbas Pastrami, who he worked under a lot during the 90s, and which is where he learned a lot of his tricks of the trade. Pearl and X, I wrote with X because they're both great new horror films that are also about the past. X is great in its own way. It is very much a generic slasher film set in the 70s, porn, sex, blood, knives, creepy old people, all that kind of stuff. But it does it in a really fun, exciting, creative way. Ty West films it really excitingly. But Pearl is really the one that people love and the one that people prefer, mainly because of how fucking good Mia Goth is in the film. She should have been nominated for an Oscar. She was that damn good in the movie. And just the overall aesthetic, the kind of like Wizard of Oz Technicolor bright Douglas Sirk aesthetic that Pearl has, is such a unique setting for such a fucked up story. End plasmid. What? I am my stepbro's cunt. I have no idea what that means. Plasmoid. Okay, Stay on Board, the Leoga Baker story is a interesting film. It's a film about a trans man who was a professional skateboarder who skated, obviously, in the female category before their transition, and it started being chat to be about fucking. Do you have literal Nazi shit in it? Fucking assholes. Okay. So that's something nice. Stay on Board, the Leo Baker story is about a trans man who obviously used to be in the used to be one of the top, or the top female skateboarder in the world. Won a shit ton of competitions, was really good at that. And then during, I think it was during COVID, or it might have been before that, they kind of came to realization that they are a trans man. And the film, very interestingly, was a film about just going to be about them as a skateboarder, but it being taped around the time of COVID and being taped around the time of them finding out that side of them, it turns into the story of just identity and story of struggling to come to terms with that with themselves, and then struggling to figure out a way to be transition in the public eye. And I think it shows such a beautiful human take on a subject that is very foreign to a lot of people. This is quite an obscure documentary, and really not a lot of people have talked about it or have said much about it, but I really did love it, and I really think that these are the kind of films that queer filmmakers should be making more of, because they are so beautifully human that I think it is the thing that you can kind of like show to someone and connect to someone without, seeming preachy. Hit the Road is a film by Pana Panahi, which is Jafar Panahi's son. This is a film I was talking about a bit earlier, which is about a family that are going on a road trip across Iran because they're trying to leave the country, and it's got the dad with a broken leg, mom driving the car, the older brother, and it's just a very quiet film about family, and over time you learn why they are escaping Iran and why they're leaving, and why they're escaping and why they're leaving, and you kind of slowly come to these realizations about these characters and who they are and why they who they are and why they are where they are. Sorry, I'm fucking still shaking from that fucking insult. But Hit the Road was beautiful. Really, really gorgeous film. Really interesting that we got two great films from a father and a son this year. EO, it's so incredibly sad. I remember seeing a tweet after this movie came out that said, I just want to see a movie about a donkey where the donkey is just happy and has a good time and gets all the love that he wants and deserves. Because despite this being quite, heavily inspired by Oh Hazal Baltazar, they're both films about donkeys as the main protagonists, which are literal beasts of burden that brunt the weight of the world that is thrust upon them. EO takes the story in a much more environmentalist standpoint, whereas Oh Hazal Baltazar is much more about Christianity and Christ. It's a Christ figure allegory. EO is trying to use the donkey as a symbolism for just nature and how human beings treat just nature and animals in this incredibly cruel fashion, even though we share this planet with them, and they are also living creatures as part of the ecosystem of the world. It is the best kind of vegan propaganda in that it is very emotional and tugs your heartstrings in a very non-manipulative way, I feel. And it is obviously trying to manipulate you, but I don't think it's doing it in that manipulative of a manner. I'm sorry, I'm still it is the best kind of vegan propaganda, because unlike something like Cow, which came out earlier this year, which is just about how cows get tortured all the time, this does try to create a narrative and create a point of view that the audience can much more emotionally resonate with, whereas Cow was much more about just look how fucked everything is, look how cruel this is, fuck you, you're an asshole. Where I think this is much more trying to connect you in a very, like, pathos manner, more so than something like Cow did. And you just care so fucking much about this donkey at the end of it. You just want this donkey to have a good life, and he just isn't going to. Jordan Peele's Nope. I loved Nope. I'm a huge fan of Jordan Peele's films. I think that he obviously makes very divisive movies. For a lot of people, I think, especially now after everyone is comparing every one of his films to Get Out, and Get Out is just such a tightly written screenplay. It is a very tight. That film has so many layers. It has so much going on. Everything feels like it is a puzzle piece put in perfectly. Whereas Us and Nope are much bigger, much more sprawling. They have so much that they have on their minds and that Jordan Peele wants to just throw at the fucking wall, that people aren't as respondent to them because they're much more eclectic. They have so much to do that they don't always hit every ball that gets thrown at them. But I feel that he takes such big swings in them that when he does hit, it's always a home run. Analogy went on a bit too long, but I don't know. I just feel like Jordan Peele movies, you have to almost look at them more as metaphors than actual stories. And I think that's, especially with Us, what a lot of people's issue with it was that the metaphor was just so much on the sleeve that the story just kind of fell away underneath it. Nope tells at least a bit more of an actual clear, concise story. And I think doing it with this giant blockbuster scope was really interesting. And I think he pulled it off. I've never seen a alien movie like Nope. And I think that that alone should give it some props. I was a big fan of Nope. Moon Age Daydream. No one talked about this anymore, and I don't know why. Maybe people didn't see this in theaters and you kind of just have to get the full experience, but it is this like experimental film documentary about David Bowie's life, going through it almost like this giant montagey video essay, going through all the different eras of his life, and it does it semi-chronologically, pretty chronologically, going through different eras. It's not the kind of documentary that will tell you a lot of David Bowie's life. Most of it is comprised of interview footage from David Bowie interviews, and also performance footage from those eras, from like Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, Thin White Duke, all of those ones. So if you're a David Bowie fan, this is fantastic. It is everything you want. It's got the songs, it's got the Bowie, it shows an interesting side of him and shows some interviews and some stuff that you've never seen before. But at the end of the day, it knows what you want as a David Bowie fan, which is incredible performances and incredible music, which just gives you in spades and just looks incredible. It's edited fantastically. The director is also the editor. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. So damn soft and beautiful and sweet and kind. Just one of the nicest films I've seen in a very long time. And I feel like cinema since COVID and Trump and just everything that has happened in the last decade or so, film has become very dark to reflect a lot of the attitude of the time. So when there's a film that comes along like Marcel the Shell Shoes On, which is just unabashedly kind and good, it feels almost foreign. Like you're waiting for the sardonic sardonicness to come through. You're waiting for the cynicism to come in, but there just isn't any. And it's not a film that's just happy the whole time. It's not. There's some very like sad and poignant moments in it, and but despite that, and despite like, you know, Marcel, like, he makes jokes. He's not just a purely just kind and good all the way through. Doesn't just always do the right thing all the time, but he's just got a purely good soul, and it just shines through with the rest of the film. And the character is beautiful, and the film is beautiful. Babylon. I was talking about earlier about how much I liked Babylon, because I really did like Babylon. I'm a big fan of films that take a shit ton of risks but don't pan out, rather than a film that just feels safe and just kind of works. And Babylon makes a lot of mess in its runtime. It does not need to be that long, does not need to have as many weird subplots as it needs to. It takes such weird tangents. It has such a weird little montage at the end that it didn't really have any need to have. That is just such a strange, ballsy ass move. But at the end, it just kind of worked for me. I remembered the film. Margot Robbie was just absolutely magnetic throughout the whole thing. Brad Pitt's storyline was pretty good. I can't remember the new guy's name, but his character was really well written, and I thought he did a good job performing in it. But the film just has this feeling of movie. It just feels like as much of a movie that Damien Chazelle could shove into 3 hours. It probably should have been a miniseries. Probably should have been 8 hours instead of 3. 8-hour long miniseries, 8 episodes, an hour each. That probably would have done this story more justice than the form we have it in now, which is just this 3-hour mess of just sex and parties in Los Angeles and Hollywood and drugs and movies and acting and all this stuff in this movie that just looks beautiful, sounds amazing, and the people are beautiful, and the colors are great. I was a really, really big fan of this movie, even though it does not stitch together very well. And it is just a mess that I enjoy. Coming on the other end of that, despite this also being a 3-hour-long epic, this is a very tightly constructed film that is much more low-key than Babylon. Tar, with Cate Blanchett, gives one of the best performances I've probably seen in a movie in a very long time. She was fantastic in this movie. The film looks incredible. It is just this great modern look into someone that has just this life that is just all perfect, a little tidy, perfect. But then you see the little scratches come through the surface, and in this only modern way, where what it is that destroys her is social media canceling. But you completely get on board with it because she deserves it completely. She's a horrible, terrible person, but it kind of shows that, if she was this kind of person 50 years ago, she probably would have got away with it. But because she's here and here now, the horribleness can kind of be contained in a way. And it has maybe my favorite last shot of any movie this year. I fucking loved the ending shot of Tar. Mad God, fucking Phil Tippett's incredible 20-year opus of stop motion that he spent forever trying to make. He did this. He is the guy that did the puppets for Star Wars. Star Wars and other movies, but he does all these little stop motion animations, and this is just his giant magnum opus that he spent like 25 years doing. That is just the best stop motion you have ever seen in your entire fucking life. There's not really much of a plot to it. It's just this guy in this helmet, scuba gear, that is just keeps going down below this post-apocalyptic world where everything is just creatures and completely foreign to what we think of as any form of like humanity or animal or anything like that, but it just feels and looks incredible, and it is just this spectacular achievement in filmmaking. The Banshees of Inisherin, as I spoke about earlier, I really appreciate and really love this movie. It is just such a sad human film about what it means, what friendship means, what kindness means, what how we wrestle with our own mortality and how we try and leave a kind of any form of legacy to that. And then it also speaks to kind of like the sacrifices that artists make to create art, and is that always a good idea? Are the sacrifices you make to create the art always worth it in the end? And the film comes to pretty depressing realizations about all of that. It doesn't give you any concrete answer because life doesn't work like that. Life isn't black and white. There's no yes or no to that question. But it kind of wrestles with that philosophical question of, are the sacrifices we make for art always worth it? And the film says, sometimes no. It is a very bleak film, but very funny in a lot of times, in a lot of very darkly humorous ways. Both the lead actors are fantastic in it. Great donkey. The supporting cast was also great. I love Martin McDonagh's writing. I think he's very funny in a very, very dark way. Huge fan of the Banshees of Inisherin. Everything Everywhere All at Once. What do I need to say about it? It is the film of 2022. Everyone talks about it. Everyone loves it. It does everything you want a movie to do. It has amazing action sequences. It will make you cry. It is hilarious. The kung fu is great. It brings back actors that you love from the past and gives them these all-timer performances and all-timer characters that they always deserved. Everything that people love about movies is in this film. I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once, and you probably do too. Aftersun. I fucking loved Aftersun so much. I first heard about this, honestly, when the year-end list started popping up. Because I don't know where this first premiered, if it was Sundance or... not Sundance, or... I don't know if it was TIFF or South by Southwest or where it was, but I started hearing a lot of buzzings about it during the end of the year, like November-ish, when all of those lists started coming out. I was like, okay, what the fuck is this movie? Why is everyone raving about it? So then I go see it, and at the end, I'm literally like, I'm tearing up watching this movie by myself in a theater at the ending. That final fucking last shot just is this gut punch of just beautiful emotion. Paul Mescal is incredible as this father that is just trying to have this meaningful bond with his daughter that is clearly isn't in a good place in his life, like mentally, financially, professionally. He just is not he's just not in a good spot where he is right now, but he's trying to take his daughter on this vacation in Turkey and just have this, try and create this meaningful connection with her. And it is one of the most honest films I've seen about that connection between a parent and a child, because it shows like those awkward bits, but it doesn't ever fall into like melodrama where there's like basic plot points that break them up, that make them split up. Like, yeah, he fucks up a lot of times during the movie. She acts kind of shitty at some points during the movie too. But at the end of it, they are just trying with each other. They're trying to form a connection. She's obviously still a child and has childlike emotional state, and he had her when he was like 18 or so he never really got to develop a strong bond, strong separation with his daughter because of the age gap, and he never really got to have a what's the word I'm looking for? What's the phrase I'm looking for? He never really got to have, like, put his life in a position where he can provide her what she needs and provide himself what he needs. I don't know. It's a beautiful film. It's shot incredibly well. It's a first-time director, and my God, I'm excited to see what she does next, because Aftersun was just such a hit out the park. And my favorite film of 2022 was All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. I fucking loved this movie. I've been a huge fan of Nan Goldin for about 3 years now. She's one of my favorite photographers. I find her work so incredibly honest and so incredibly raw. It is exactly the type of photography that I love. This kind of story, like journalism by telling your life in a way, kind of painting a portrait of an era through a incredibly personal period of your own life and your own time, while also showing, like, Nan Goldin currently as an activist, as someone who was heavily addicted to painkillers and is now trying to use her clout in the art world to protest all these museums that are funded by the Sackler family, who have ruined a lot of lives of a lot of Americans because of the way that they have pushed the opioid epidemic and the opioid crisis onto a lot of Americans because of their shitty drugs that are highly addictive, that a lot of people are addicted to, who Nan Goldin used to be addicted to. And the film just kind of delicately weaves this balance between telling the history of Nan Goldin and how she became who she was, how she created this awesome portfolio of beautiful art in her past and beautiful photos, to the person she is now, who's just this hard-ass protester that is really fighting for a cause that she believes in, that something that killed a lot of her friends and killed a lot of her people that she loved and ruined a lot of lives that she saw when she grew up, and is just trying to make the world a better place. And it just has this incredibly cathartic ending where it does get the gallery at the Met closed. I don't know, it's I think the reason why this film, out of every film last year, resonated with me the most was, I think it takes a very special kind of film to make you want to step out of the movie theater and just immediately go create something. And as much as I loved all of these other films that I talked about, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed was the film that made me feel that the most. It made me step out of there and wanting to just make art. However I could, in any possible way I could, it made me want to make art. And I love and appreciate any film that can do that. So yeah. Oh, that's it. Those are my favorite films of the year. My throat feels completely raw, so I think I'm going to call it there.